Good morning and welcome back to World News, coming to you live from Warsaw. I'm Stalia Strzemska. And we start with the latest update from the Vatican following the passing of Pope Francis on Monday morning. As the world continues to mourn the pontiff, the cardinals met at 9 a.m. local time to decide the date for the Pope's funeral. The meeting marks the first in a series of general congregations. Cardinals are expected to decide when the Pope's body will be moved into St. Peter's Basilica before burial, so the public and the faithful can pay their respects. The passing of Pope Francis has initiated a mourning period in the Vatican and marks the beginning of an ancient tradition to select a new pontiff. The leader of the Roman Catholic Church died Monday morning at his residence in the Vatican's Casa Santa Marta at the age of 88. The Vatican has released a photo of Pope Francis in his open coffin, dressed in a red robe with the papal mitre on his head and a rosary in his hand. The image was taken in the chapel of the Casa Santa Marta, Francis's residence at the Vatican. News of the Pope's passing came unexpectedly, as he was present at Easter celebrations over the weekend. Just one day before his death, Pope Francis dedicated his Easter message and the annual Urbi et Orbi blessing to world peace, global disarmament, and the release of prisoners in Gaza. However, Francis's health lately was in severe decline. He was hospitalized for 5 weeks from February 14th for double pneumonia, which became the most serious health crisis of his 12-year papacy. The Holy See released the death certificate on Monday evening, detailing the cause of death of Pope Francis, who passed away in his Vatican apartment at 7:35 a.m. in Rome on April 21st. The document says that after an examination, a Vatican physician determined the Pope died from a stroke, resulting in irreversible cardiovascular collapse.
Pater, et Filius, et Spiritus.
Pope Francis has left behind a last will and testament detailing his burial wishes, dated June 29, 2022. The document reflects his commitment to simplicity and humility, requesting to be laid to rest in the papal Basilica of St. Mary Major in Rome. This choice departs from tradition, as most popes are typically buried in St. Peter's Basilica. In the will, Pope Francis asked for his tomb to be located between the Pauline and Sforza chapels in the Basilica, with no other title but his papal Latin name Franciscus inscribed on it. The tomb should be simple, without any decorations. He also expressed gratitude for the prayers of those who have supported him, adding that the suffering in his final years was offered to the Lord for peace and brotherhood among nations. Pope Francis will be remembered as a humble servant, a tireless advocate for immigrants and the impoverished, and a passionate voice for those in need. His calls for social justice, critique of unchecked capitalism, and urgent pleas for climate action showed his commitment to creating a better world, not only for the Catholics. Here's a report on the extraordinary 12 years of his papacy.
From the moment he became Pope in 2013, Pope Francis's pontificate has been shaped by a clear and enduring message: peace.
May the sound of arms be silenced in war-torn Ukraine. May there be the boldness needed to open the door to negotiation and to gestures of dialogue and meeting, in order to achieve a just and lasting peace. May the sound of arms be silenced in the Middle East.
One of his most symbolic gestures and a particularly striking moment of his pontificate was in April 2019, when he knelt to kiss the feet of South Sudanese leaders at the head of a country grappling with a horrific civil war.
I think that today in the world, this is the greatest plague, the sale of weapons.
Francis left a global mark with his message of peace, but also interreligious dialogue, most powerfully embodied by his historic 2021 visit to war-torn Iraq. This was the first ever papal visit to the country, where he held a symbolic meeting with Grand Ayatollah Ali al-Sistani, the spiritual leader of millions of Shia Muslims.
Iraq will always remain with me in my heart. I ask all of you, dear brothers and sisters, to work together in unity for a future of peace and prosperity.
Through various channels and rhetorics, Francis upheld the notion of mercy for one another.
Sono figli di Dio.
People with homosexual tendencies are children of God.
He was a man who cared about the renewal of the Catholic Church. He cared about emphasizing mercy, which other popes also taught, but he seemed to have a special focus on this topic. He focused on the matter of the sick and the poor.
Despite stirring controversy, the Pope encouraged pastoral workers to welcome those who cohabit without marriage, as well as divorced and remarried individuals. And he sounded a global call to protect the planet.
Christian brothers and sisters, in the commitment to care for creation as a sacred gift of the Creator, let us stand with the victims of environmental and climate injustice.
During his 12 years, the pontiff made 47 trips outside of Italy, visiting more than 65 states and territories, clocking up more than 465,000 kilometers, and was prepared to travel more if his health had allowed it.
On the second day of the war, I went to the Russian embassy and said I was ready to go to Moscow to see Putin.
The pontiff kept working until the end. On Palm Sunday, he met U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance. In his final Easter Urbi et Orbi, his annual global blessing, delivered just a day before his death, the Pope once again urged world leaders to lay down their arms and return to dialogue, thus concluding his pontificate of peace for peace. Reporting for TVP World, I'm Aisha Badja.
In the wake of Pope Francis's passing, the Vatican now enters a significant transitional phase known as sede vacante, meaning while the seat is vacant. For the next few weeks, the governance of the Catholic Church will be overseen by the College of Cardinals as they prepare for the monumental task of selecting a new pontiff.
The Pope's passing is a significant moment not only for the millions of faithful across the globe. It also comes with many consequences and responsibilities for the Catholic Church itself.
We expected Pope Francis to join the house of the Holy Father for some time now. Of course, it always comes as a big blow. Still, we're not afraid. There has always been continuity in the Catholic Church.
What happens after the Pope passes is laid out in a strict and precise set of rules, worked out over centuries. Firstly, the papal apartments are sealed and the Pope's ring is broken as a way to prevent any changes to his final will and to mark the end of his reign. The Church will then spend the next 9 days in mourning. It is also during that time that the Pope will be buried. Papal funerals usually gather tens of thousands of faithful from all over the globe, and this time is unlikely to be any different. 2 to 3 weeks after the funeral, the cardinals will gather to elect a new leader of the Catholic Church.
The conclave is when the cardinals come to Rome to elect a new pope. There are about 140 under the age of 80 who will enter into the Sistine Chapel to vote who should be the new pope. Each day they will have several ballots. They will decide who they want to be pope. At the end of each ballot, they will burn their ballots, and you can see the smoke from above Sistine Chapel.
The famous smoke from a special chimney installed on the roof of the Sistine Chapel has to be white to signify the cardinals agreeing on the new pope. If it's black, it means the vote was inconclusive and they have to deliberate again. Before the conclave gathers in May, it is the College of Cardinals which oversees the Catholic Church, although typically no major decisions are made in that time. A major change requested by Pope Francis before he passed regarding his funeral is that he will not be laid to rest in St. Peter's Basilica, a traditional resting place for most popes. Instead, he opted for the St. Mary Major Basilica across town, signifying his close connection to the Virgin Mary. For TVP World, I'm Kazimierz Łysiak.
We'll, of course, keep you updated on the latest from the Vatican. For now, however, let's move on to other news, starting with Ukraine. We are preparing meetings with partners that could bring us closer to a ceasefire, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said in his Monday evening address to the nation. The announcement of the talks comes amid intensified Russian hostilities following a 30-hour Easter truce.
On Wednesday, we will meet with partners from Europe, from the UK, France, Germany, as well as from the US. These meetings could bring us closer to a ceasefire and a real lasting peace. Now, after Easter, the whole world sees the real issue, the true reason why the fighting continues. It is Russia that is the source of the war. It is Moscow that must issue the real order to the Russian army to cease fire, and if such a harsh Russian order for silence is not given, there is no silence. Indeed, on Easter there were no air raid alarms, and some areas of the front saw silence. So it is possible when Russia decides to reduce the killing. But even on this Easter there were Russian assault operations, strikes and shelling, and there were casualties, including civilian losses.
Russia launched a large-scale drone strike on the Ukrainian port city of Odesa late last night, wounding at least 3 people. The attack targeted a residential building in a densely populated area. Odesa mayor confirmed the reports, and regional governors said that the wounded are receiving medical treatment. The strike on Odesa came as Ukraine awaits a response from Moscow to its proposed ban on long-range strikes against civilian infrastructure. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who first proposed the partial ceasefire on April 20th, called for a 30-day halt to any attacks on civilian sites using long-range drones and missiles, with the possibility of extension. While Russia's Vladimir Putin expressed openness to peace initiatives, he has yet to act on the proposal. And now the latest from the business world. There seems to be no end in sight for gold's upward rally. It's up by over 30% since the start of the year. That's the strongest start for gold since 1974. A large part of this rally is being driven by a weakening dollar, which is also pushing up the value of the Polish zloty, now nearing its 4-year high against the greenback. Gold prices have surged to a record high of over 3,480 per ounce, surpassing earlier forecasts of 3,400 by year's end, far ahead of schedule. The rally is driven by a weakening US dollar, political uncertainty and trade tensions. Goldman Sachs now predicts that gold could reach $4,000 per ounce by mid-2026. Demand for safe haven assets has also intensified amid President Donald Trump's criticism of the Federal Reserve and its chief, Jerome Powell, whom he called a major loser. The US dollar will now cost you just 3.71 zloty, a 10% drop since the start of the year. And with this, we conclude our news update. Thank you for watching, and please stay tuned for more World Talks coming up next.